who actually works for a bank as a developer? Okay, all you raising the hand, you have to leave the room now. I'm of course joking. Well, it's very nice because it's the first time that we actually have to use an overflow room for a closing keynote. So it does mean that people are interested in this subject. And of course, with that type of title, it's a very good wording. So it is my honor. I mean, the next keynote speaker, he actually has already spoken at Devox UK 2 years ago, and that's where I actually saw Freaky Clown for the very first time. Freaky Clown is not his real name. He likes to be anonymous, which is a bit hard with all this face tracking and all of that type of stuff. But anyway, I still don't know his real name, but it is my honor to actually welcome on stage our ethical hacker, Freaky Clown.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, or evening now. So thank you all for joining me, and I hope you've all really enjoyed Devox. It's an amazing event. I wish I could be here for more of it. So today I'm going to talk about how I rob banks. Now, my job is basically the complete opposite of probably everyone here. You all create stuff, I break stuff. And I'm going to give you a little hint and an insight into what my job is at Sygenta. So first a little... get my clicker working. There we go. First, a little introduction as to who I am. This is my boring LinkedIn profile style CV. I've been in cybersecurity now for 20 mumble years. I've been the head of ethical hacking. I've been the head of social engineering and physical assessments. I've been the head of offensive cyber research for a defense firm. All kind of boring stuff, but we like to have a bit more fun at Sygenta, which is where I'm co-founder and co-CEO. So here is the slightly more fun thing. I am one of these. I am a hacker, and I have been a hacker all of my life. But you don't all have to worry, because I'm an ethical one. Just the word up there, ethical, that's it. Anyway, that means I am not one of these. I'm not one of these. I'm not one of these. I'm an old school one of these, and I've been doing it since I was a little kid. At least until these guys did this. Thankfully, all the allegations were made up. They were false allegations, false charges. They were all dropped. I gained my freedom. I then went on to get the highest security clearance you can in the UK. That means I went on to work with these guys. I did a lot of work with these people. A lot of work with these people. Ended up working for these guys. That means most of my career, I have literally gone to work dressed like this. On Fridays, we'd dress down. But nowadays, though, you'll mostly find me looking like this, going on doing ethical hacking stuff. And when I'm not doing that, you'll find me doing stuff like this, which is flying around the world. I'm really fortunate to be able to do this. Fly around the world, help companies become more secure, help everyone understand security a little bit more, give talks like this to try and get a mindset of security in everyone. In fact, we do so much outreach, especially to schools. We actually recently won an award from the NCSC in the UK. But when I'm not doing that, you'll find me doing stuff like this as a hobby. I also love doing this as a hobby because I'm quite geeky. But my favourite hobby by far is this, which comes in really handy when these people do that. So, as an aside, don't ever break out of handcuffs. They really don't like it. It just makes things a lot worse for you. So I'm going to talk about how I rob banks for a living. Which sounds a fanciful job title, and it is possibly the best job in the world ever, because I get to do really cool stuff and not get arrested too often. So I will caveat this entire talk with this one piece of advice. Everything I do is illegal unless you have permission. So don't go back and try and do this on anyone else or on your own firm or on your own friends. You can do it against your own code, that's fine. But try not to do any of this, especially the kidnapping, okay? So you're probably all sitting there thinking, why do I care about banks? I'm a developer, right? I don't work for a bank. Some of you do, unfortunately. You're a student, or maybe you don't even care about security, and you think, actually, it's not even my job, it's someone else's job. I'm going to try and show you why it's everybody's responsibility. So, I'm going to start off with banks, and the reason I'm picking on banks is because banks have all of the money, they have all of the resources, and they also literally have all of the money. That's where you want to get to if you're a criminal. So there are 4 ways to rob a bank, and we're going to try and go through all 4 of those ways very quickly. The first way is digitally. This is where most of you people will be like, oh my God, like he's going to take away loads of stuff about what we do. This will be quite brief, I promise you. Right, so the two ways to rob a bank digitally is the bank or the end user. Now, as you can see from this, let's see if this works, from this side, have a new debit card, and let me just post it onto Twitter. Right? If you're doing this, this is not good, but today we're not going to focus on the end user because, as you can see, it's very easy to steal money from the end user. So we're going to look at the bank. So if I asked anyone, like take a straw poll, what do you need in order to rob a bank digitally? You'd probably come up with a pretty good list like this, right? You need some mad elite hacking skills that you've developed over years. You need some programming skills, database skills, exploit skills, know about operating systems, firewalls, WAFs, all the cool stuff, right? That's what everyone wants you to believe, right? Now, that's kind of what I know after 25 years, but you actually don't need that anymore because, to be frank, and this is a bit awkward, you lot make it really easy. Please don't throw anything. What you need nowadays to really hack into a bank is basically a computer, technically a browser, okay? We'll get a little bit technical. And what you do is you go to these banks, and what I'm going to show you now are real banks that I have worked with, okay? And what you'll find is something like this. Yeah, those of you that are laughing are right too. This is a bank running a Joomla admin open to the public. Yeah, or they'll do stuff like this. They'll run their webmail completely open to everyone. Oh, I thought I'd forgotten to redact something else. This is another bank that has the website admin just open to the internet. This is what real banks are really doing, right? I know some of you are probably doing slightly better. Some of you are doing slightly worse. Let's not worry about that. But as you can see, it's really, really easy. You don't even have to hack it. You just browse around a bit and you'll end up stumbling across something. This is the bad side of the internet now. You can literally just wander around and you'll find something of interest. But I go around the world talking about this sort of stuff, and people always come up to me with two questions. First off, where do I get this awesome clicker, right, that can do this sort of stuff? Awesome. And the second thing is, can you teach me how to hack? Now, how many people here do hacking? How many people here do ethical hacking? I should rephrase that. Yeah, that's better. Slightly less hands, weirdly. Right, so... So this is not a picture of me, by the way. This is Hackerman. Anyway, so how to hack basics, right? And this is going to scare a lot of you developers, right? This is how you real-world hack, right? You find some sort of input field, probably a search function. You put in a backtick or a single quote or a bit of HTML code if you know it, right? And generally what happens is, now you're all thinking, my website's safe. There are other characters as well, but we're doing the basics here. What will end up generally happening is you'll get a bank doing this. If a bank does this, it is not a good sign, right? Because you can do nefarious things with this sort of thing. It's really hard for me to show hacking live on stage without actually doing it. So I've had to come up with a new solution for this. Who here remembers this guy? Literally no one. Okay, right. So in the UK, we had this TV show called The Phone Jacker. And it was a prank show, kind of like Bart Simpson's on The Simpsons, right? He would phone up random unsuspecting members of the public and prank call them with something. And he did this one sketch where he phoned up and he'd be like, I'm calling from your bank and there is a pigeon stuck in your bank account. And I need your password to get into it. Exactly, right? Inevitably, people would then give him the password or the PIN or whatever he was asking for. And it got me and a colleague of mine thinking, and we thought, actually, a great way to show this in reports of how we got code executing is actually to put pigeons into bank accounts. So now the reports that come from us, if you're a bank, will look something like this. Because that pigeon shouldn't be in that bank, but I've injected some code into the website in order to control it. In fact, I have quite a few pictures of pigeons. Probably way too many, actually. My favourite one by far, though, is the next one, which I think actually, and if this is your bank, I'm really sorry, but this one actually improves the look of the bank. Sometimes CSS is your friend. Anyway, if you can start doing stuff like this, right, you can start injecting code onto a website, you can start messing around with things, you get some errors, you can start messing around with some tools to start probing the database behind it. And you get some tools. This one was written by a friend of mine. And you can see it's starting to, actually I'll zoom in a little bit, it's starting to pull out CCV numbers and credit card numbers. Interestingly, that top one is a test card, so they obviously just tested it once and then just went live with it, because YOLO. It was probably a Friday or something. But if you can start doing stuff like this, you can start doing really interesting things. Like you can start stealing actual money from banks. Now, the next screen I'm going to show you is actually a photograph of an ATM of my bank accounts after doing one of these jobs for about half an hour. And as you can see, you can make quite a lot of money doing this. And this is from literally browsing around, finding a couple of code executions, and then just pulling out money from their system. I obviously have to give all of this back. That's the ethical part. Otherwise, to be fair, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in the Bahamas. So that's how easy it is nowadays for people to hack into bank websites, right? And commercial entities are even worse than that because they don't have the budget. But I said there's 4 ways of robbing a bank. Now, a lot of people ask me this, right? So my job really does involve breaking into banks for a living, right? So I physically break into places and steal stuff. Whether or not that's helicopters, gold bars, people. I have kidnapped people as part of my job. It's quite fun, a bit different. You don't normally get to do that in any other job, actually. But this is what people ask me, like, can you teach me how to rob a bank physically? So as I said, there are 2 ways to do it. Can anyone shout out what they think is number 1 way to rob a bank?
Through the janitor closet.
Through the janitor closet? Who has a janitor closet? No. Come on, you're all thinking it, but you're all too shy.
Social engineering.
No. Guns. I love guns. I love shooting guns. I love shooting things. It's a little bit bad nowadays, but I still love doing it, right? And it's one way of robbing a bank. You can go into a bank with a gun and rob it. That's how they used to do it. It's old school. Nowadays, you will just get shot and arrested. I'm not sure which order. That is the worst way to try and rob a bank, right? Just do anything else other than this. Actually, there's one guy in the States, 1995, I think it was, McCarthy Wheeler, who's a genius bank robber. I say genius in the most wrong way. He heard that if you use lemon juice, you can use lemon juice as a invisible ink. So what he did was, he went to rob a bank and he covered himself in lemon juice. Thinking that he would be invisible to the CCTV, and then walked. That is the worst way to rob a bank. Second to that is a gun. So, how do you rob a bank physically, right? So this is where I come into my own, right? This is what you actually need. You need permission. Remember, this is illegal. If you go and try this at your local bank, you'll get shot or arrested. It's actually very hard not to get shot and arrested in this job. Bit of preparation, bit of confidence, cool gadgets, night vision goggles, that sort of thing. Anything James Bondish is quite cool. And the mindset. And the mindset is what I'm going to try and teach you today about security, right? So that you go back and you make all of your companies a lot more secure. Now, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've broken into thousands and thousands of buildings and banks and government sites and military sites. I have a 100% success rate at doing this. It's not because I'm really good at this job, it's just because security isn't that great. So, here's how we teach everyone to rob a bank physically. First of all, you need a bit of observation. Right? You need to understand the building that you're breaking into. You need to look at it. Okay? And the first thing you can do to any public building is walk into reception. That is not a crime. Okay? You walk into reception and you'll see a map like this. This shows you the layout. This is for firemen. Now you know how it's laid out. Great, memorize it or steal it. People generally don't stop you if you go in and steal one of these, which is a bit odd. But I guess they realise, well, what are they going to do with that? Well, what you're going to do with that is walk around and go underneath the ground and maybe through some tunnels, and it will look a little bit scary like this. That's not me, that's Blair Witch, by the way. But honestly, this is underneath a hospital. And I tell you what, it's bloody scary. Walking around, that's all water. I don't know quite what's happened here. This is like some flooded basement. It's terrifying, especially if you're on your own. Anyway, you walk around. I mean, it's always interesting to have a look around because it's not like any company, any bank would just leave a... Oh, wait, hang on. They've left a safe down here. Okay. All right, well, one of my hobbies is lockpicking, so that's over quickly. Right, so you've walked around a little bit. You have a look at the perimeter. Right, then we're going to come up with a couple of quizzes here, so I'll need probably the front row to shout out because I can't hear you all the way back there. Right, this is a building in London. Can anyone tell me some security issues that they can see? Sorry? I can't even understand you. Google. It's from Google, but there's no reception. You can see reception, but that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is it's made out of glass, right? Glass you can see through. That's how it works. It's a window. It is not a security feature. That's probably the biggest thing I see when walking around is you'll be able to look through windows. In fact, this particular building in London, it's a government building. They have a glass front to it, and they've got this little meeting room up here, all glass fronted. As you can see, it's quite cold out here. People are wearing these big, thick coats. I had to wait outside this building for 20 minutes to take this photo. The reason for that is I didn't want to have to redact out more of their stuff because they were holding a meeting in here and projecting everything onto this wall. Interesting stuff like charts and budgets, the sort of stuff that you wouldn't want everyone outside looking at. But this is what people do, make everything out of glass. And we'll see this as an issue later on. You get into fencing. This is anti-climb fencing. It's just really good stuff. Except they decided to improve security. This is a feature we see in this talk a lot, is they try and improve it and they make it worse. They improved it by putting up these lights. Or should I say steps, which allowed me to get over the fence. This is a bank. This is the back of a bank in England. I broke into this bank. Can anyone see any issues with this bank in particular? Windows? Well, yeah. Sorry? Ventilation. Yeah, that's actually how I got in, was through this secure padlock that they've put on this thing. But the biggest issue was actually this CCTV camera, which is protecting this tree. I think they heard that money grows on trees or something. It's quite important to them to protect that tree, ecology, and sort of all of that. People get CCTV wrong all the time. You'll leave this talk, and when you go back and you walk through your cities and towns, you'll see that people do CCTV terribly. Stuff like this. If it is within reach of my hand on tiptoe, it is not a security measure. I don't even know what they're trying to protect here. Like the fern, I guess? I'm not sure. Anyway, people do CCTV badly. So, for example, in this one, they've got 2 cameras. Actually, they've got 3 cameras. 2 of them pointing this direction. 1 of them pointing that way into the woods. Oh, hang on. We go back. 2 of them pointing this way, 1 of them pointing that way, none that way. Because criminals are apparently too lazy to walk through the woods and then go over their thing. For some weird reason, I have a duplicate slide, so ignore that. So once you've had a look at the perimeter and you maybe have got round the fencing, you'll try and look at, say, the ingress points, where you can get into the building or into the secure site. And again, these are all real photos of real sites. Now, can anyone see any security issues here? Yes, it's very easy to pick up on the very simple one, but we're trying to improve your mindset here. First of all, they've built this out of really expensive metal, and obviously they knew I was coming, so they built it out of ladders or something. There's also no CCTV anywhere. It's probably off protecting a tree rather than the gate, which is much more important. And I see this all the time. People spend shed loads of money on gateways and doors and all sorts of security measures. But there's a funny story about one client who had a door system like this. This was about 10 years ago now. It's just like when RFID was coming in, no one was really cloning it. They spent £60,000 on a door. It's ridiculous money back then. And they asked us to come in and test it. And so I looked at it, and it was actually quite daunting. You know, it was a door system that I didn't know how to hack, especially from a distance. There was a massive open space, kind of like this to the bins over there, like a long way. I couldn't really get near it. So I ummed and ahed about sort of doing the job, eventually took it, went to my hotel room, scratched my head a bit, left at about 2, 3 in the morning, went to the site, climbed over one of their fences, through some bramble bushes, got completely shredded on my arms, sat in a cold, muddy ditch, water up to my knees. It was not a pleasant night. It started to snow, just to make things even better. And I'm sitting there in a balaclava and night vision goggles watching this door for about 3 hours. Right? I watch it continuously, seeing if there's some flaw, some mechanism, something that I can leverage to get in. A couple of hours later, I went back through the bramble bushes, over the fence, back to my hotel, got washed up, got a nice suit on, went up the next morning. And as I'm walking along, as I walk towards the door, I check my watch. And as I'm walking along, I check my watch, and I just pause, just briefly, and then carry on walking. And as I reach the door and get to where basically this chap is here in this stock photo, this isn't a real thing, as I get to there, the door opens. It just swings round, and I walk in completely without touching anything. When the security guards looked at it later, the footage, they looked at it and were like, hang on, whoa, what did you do? You didn't hack it. You didn't swipe anything. Are you a Jedi? Now, I assure you I am not a Jedi. I just used a bit of patience, which is what you need a lot of the time is patience. What I noticed in those 3 hours that I've been watching this thing in this cold, muddy ditch was that the engineers who put it in didn't understand security at all. And what they did was they left it in what's known as engineering mode. Now, engineering mode is a specific mode for the door that says every 15 minutes, do 1 revolution to check that you're working. So all I had to do was time my steps precisely to the moment that it was going to do that and walk straight into the building. This is how easy it is to break into very secure buildings. Layout always matters. Can anyone spot any security issues with this? You can run straight through. There's no barriers, no nothing. You've got the front door is here where this bit of light is. And you just walk through. Nothing to stop you. The security guard / receptionist can't even see you because of the massive desk that they've given her. In fact, she can't even see me taking a photograph of how bad their security is. There's also no CCTV, and the front is made out of glass as well. And when you get into these reception areas, you'll find stuff like this, right? Who's seen stuff like you've all got stuff like this, right? So these particular ones here are terrible because health and safety says that you cannot kill a human in sort of trying to be secure. Which means if they're starting to close, you can just hold them open because they're not allowed to squash your hand. You can also just jump over them if you really want to. This one on the left is fantastic. Can anyone see the security issues with this? You'd be thinking it's this, or potentially the really high security rope barrier. But it's the fact that it's actually behind the stairs. So you can just come in and walk straight up the stairs. You don't even have to go through the security. The next photo you're about to see is actually from a very well-respected bank in Europe. I'm not going to tell you where it is, obviously. But they had this. Now, I wasn't there to do a physical security test. But I saw this and I inquired about it. And I said, well, actually, I can't say what I said because that would be swearing. I was like, why have you got this fantastic piece of kit in your reception that works really well? And I took a photo of it. Anyway, they said, it's there for random security checks. What we do is completely at random, so that people don't know, is we put this rope barrier across here and force people to go through it. And there's a security guard that checks their badges. So I'm like, that's great. Except you've built the front out of glass. So if I was walking up to it and I saw the barrier was there, I'd just walk away again and come back tomorrow when I know it wasn't going to be there twice in a row. I don't know if they've ever replaced this, but it's weird. It's the weirdest security thing I've ever seen, I think. You get stuff like this. Most of the time, they don't even work. This gateway here is broken, so they've put an extra security guard here. Well, he probably couldn't outrun me, let's put it that way. But it doesn't matter, because he is more interested in chatting up the receptionist than watching me, who's taking a photograph of him not doing his job before I walk through the gate, which is exactly what I did like 3 seconds later. And the reason for this is people don't understand that security guards are actually people. Right? They need rest breaks, they need food, they need all the stuff that you need in a day, right? Toilet breaks, etc. This is a particularly interesting photo that I've taken. And as you can see, I'm behind the security desk. Right, first of all, that's not where anyone else should be, especially if they're rifling through your bag, if you're the security guard. This particular site is what's known as a dark site, right? This is what banks use to keep all of their computers safe, right? Like literally nobody works in these buildings. It is just the computers, 1 or 2 security guards at best. So I've managed to find my way into this building, convince this guy that I'm supposed to be there, and he's sitting there watching the monitors. And you're probably thinking, well, that's good. He's doing his job. He's looking out for criminals. Except he's not. What he is looking for is the lunch van. The lunch van is about to pull up outside and offer sandwiches for sale. And he is very hungry. So he has a dilemma. Does he get me to go out and get a sandwich? Or does he turn to me and say, wait there whilst I pop outside? So he puts his coat on and he runs outside past these massive metal barriers that you can see just in the distance there. And he's buying his sandwich. And I'm sat inside with the control button going, do I lock him out? Is that harsh? Because security people, they need some way of getting these things, otherwise they can't do their job properly. Sometimes, though, a client will actually have all of the money in the world and be able to do security properly. Now, I couldn't take a photo of the real site because it is actually a classified site, and they've done a really freaking good job of it. And they had everything. They had all of the security that you could ever imagine. But again, I spent some time observing it. Spent some time watching what goes in and out, what goes on, and I discovered that they actually had a really great system of getting in. They had a very small site, very secure site, but they had park and ride. So what I did was I drove up to the car park and just got on the bus. Nobody cared who I was. Who's going to break into a bus and go to work? Right? That's only the people that work there. So I got onto this bus, and it drives me straight in. Because it's on the AMPR system, so it's supposed to be there, and obviously everyone on the bus is already supposed to be there, so it just let me in, and I got onto the secure compound. I then ruined it later, and I'll show you some of that later on. But you've managed to infiltrate your way past all of the security barriers, past all the ingress points, and you've got to the inside, right? So what does it look like? What are the security measures you find when you get inside these buildings? Well, you'll find stuff like this. I'm pretty sure you all have something like this at work, yeah? Or you've all at least seen them. You're probably a little bit confused because they never look like that apart from on day one, yeah? After a couple of weeks or a couple of months of use, they look like this. Yes, it's a real pin pad. Can anyone see the security issue? Yeah, again, you're all thinking too simply, right? It's not 1970 or what it was that they probably put it as. They knew that the code was rubbed through, so they changed it. What they didn't do was change the screws. The screws are just plain old, boring Phillips screws, and all I did was undo them, touch the wires together, bypass it. Yay! It's really easy to do this. Sometimes you don't even need to do that. They'll help you out really well. So my wife noticed this one and took this photo for us. But they're security conscious. They changed this code a lot, and you can tell because they've rubbed out the old one and changed it. What are you doing? Why? Why are you even bothering? And like I say, sometimes people put in security and completely mess up what was actually probably already an okay system. Someone on Twitter allowed me the permission to use his tweet of his company that had installed a new security lock on their server room. And I'll give you a moment just to realize how dumb this is. So brand new padlock, you can tell because sort of pin lock rather, because it's brand new and you can't tell the code. But they've left this massive hole. And someone like me will put a wire coat hanger through there and just press the exit button. And that's quicker than using the pin code system. So they've kind of improved usability, but not security. Very bizarre. If there's anything that I can get you to take away from this talk today, though, is the next slide. Locks will only ever keep honest people out. When you left your house, you locked it up and you assumed that no criminal could ever break through that amazing lock that you've got. They won't. They'll go through the windows. Okay? Criminals are stupid and lazy, and they'll just find the easiest way in. Locks will never keep out criminals. They just stop normal people from going in. But these ones are in particularly useful for me. These are magnetic locks. So these are mag locks. They have a electromagnet in it, which means you run electricity through it, becomes magnetic, and it locks. If you take away the electricity, it no longer locks. So they've put them on the wrong side, basically. They're on the side where the attacker is, which means I can just cut the wires, and then it's no longer a lock, which isn't really useful, is it? And you'll see stuff like this. They don't even shut. They're caught on the carpet or caught on some door jamb or something. Locks don't work most of the time. But my favourite door that I've ever come across is this one. And hopefully you'll be able to see this very clearly. This door is alarmed. And it should be, because it is the worst door ever invented. First of all, it is made of glass. And as we know, criminals can't use hammers. Oh, yes, they can. Hang on, so we can just smash through it. It's a great door. It's fine, though. They've put a mag lock on it. The wrong side. Okay, okay. It's got an alarm, though. Right? And obviously, we have to make sure that people can come in and out very easily. So what they've done is they've put the alarm turn-off switch also on the outside and left the key in it. Just in case I wanted to turn it off before smashing the window. Incredible that people would think that this is a good idea. And when you're in, you'll find stuff like this, right? This looks like basically everybody's desk, I assure you, right? So I broke into this building, and I'm rifling through his desk. I take a photo. Can anyone see some security issues?
It's not locked.
It's not locked, right? That takes the time for me to compromise the machine from like a minute to like 3 seconds. Any other issues? I can see they have family, so I can find out who they are, where they live, and kidnap their family. Great, that's another great way in. Any others? There's boxes and paperwork, yeah. Right, the biggest issue here is this chap over here. Mr. I cannot be bothered with anything, especially security. So I'm standing there, I've got a camera about the size of the pro guy who's wandering around somewhere. Massive camera, and I'm stood at his colleague's desk taking photos of everything, and he doesn't care at all. Right? He is not bothered about security, and that's the biggest issue. It's the culture of security. People have to be able to say, "Oi, who are you, and why are you taking photographs?" People taking photographs inside an office environment is generally a bad thing. So if you see someone doing that, there probably shouldn't be. And you'll find stuff like this, right? So when I go in, I steal as much stuff as I can. This is one of my, it fuels my kleptomania. But I will take everything from mobile phones to like paperwork, unlock desktops everywhere. Car keys are great. Who leaves their car keys on their desk? Really, like 3 people? Yeah, right. If you leave your car keys on your desk, I will take everything off of your desk and your car keys and go and find your car in the car park and put everything in it. Because that's the safer option. That generally annoys a lot of people, but it's fun. These 14 PCs, I think it was 14, about there, I've just found them. They were used by IT and they were just left onto one side. So I actually started taking them out of the building. In fact, it got to the point where people were helping me by holding the doors open to remove all of these PCs that still had data on. And you get some really funny mentality of people if they think you're meant to be there. So, for example, I took this photo in a building. What I do when I break in is I try and get caught. That's the point, is finding the level at where the security culture is. So what do I have to do in order to really get noticed? So I broke into this building 4 times in a week, each time getting progressively more lax with my dress code, shall we say. In fact, the picture that I showed at the very beginning was how I ended up just like in T-shirts and stuff. But I broke into this building and I realized I'd forgotten my camera. So I broke out of the building by going through reception and said, I've forgotten my camera and my pass is upstairs. Can you let me back in when I come back? And the receptionist was like, he's come down the stairs. He obviously works here, so yes. So I went out, got my camera, walked back in. She lets me through without a badge. And I go back up here and I'm taking photos and I realise that nobody's really paying attention. So I stand on a chair. So I get up on this chair and I'm like this with a massive camera and I'm taking photos of this room when suddenly a couple of people pop up from nowhere and they go, "Excuse me, sir." And I'm like, "Oh, great. They've finally spotted me. They're going to ask me what I'm doing." And they're like, "Excuse me, are we going to be in a magazine?" You're on the cinema screen now. It's close enough. So, if you have one of these key lockers, these are fun, right? If you have one of these, the point is to keep keys safe. So I broke into this one building once, and I needed a key for something, but I didn't know where it was. So I went into the security room. There was no one there. So I took a photo and then took all of the keys. This was like 9 in the morning. About 4 in the afternoon, I returned back to the security office where there was 2 security guards in quite heated discussion. And I walked back in and just put all the keys back and then walk out. They never even asked me who I was, why I had all of the keys all day. Very bizarre. You should always lock your keys up. Another quick quiz for you. I was tasked to break into this building and steal some files, right? Very sensitive files that are key to this company. Can anyone tell me which files I stole from this open cabinet? The red ones. Why the red ones? Because red means secret, right? If they had coloured them in black ones, I probably would have spent a lot longer looking for them. But they made them stand out. They were like, this is the secret stuff. They could have put a sign on it or something. But don't do that. Right? Try and hide your stuff. It does help. And document control is something that a lot of companies really get badly wrong. For example, if you have these confidential paper bins, how many people have these in their office? Yeah? Right, next time you see one, try and pick one up. They're really light. Yeah, and you can just walk out with them. In fact, the wheelie bin here, actually, that you can see, is actually locked. It's got a lock underneath. But it's so full that I could just literally pull stuff out. Or I could just wheel the thing out because no one cares about the people emptying the bins. I, in fact, steal a lot of sensitive data. I once broke into a government site, stole one of these top secret file systems that they have for burning, and I got the trolley out. It's probably the most amount of secret data stolen from a government site that wasn't Edward Snowden anyway. But this was physical. And I got it out into the car park and then I realised that I've got it into a public space and then panic and then have to try and break back in with a trolley, which is a lot harder than just doing it on your own. But government sites are always fun. Here's another little quiz for you. I was outside this building for only a few seconds, right? So probably about as long as you have looked at this picture now. I only had a chance to steal something small. What did I steal from this building? The bags. The bags on the right. Yeah, great. Wow, actually got it right. Generally, the box or something. But I stole these because this is shredded paper. Why do people shred stuff? Because it's secret and you want to keep it confidential, so you shred it. What you actually do is make it a massive target for someone like me, because it's like, oh, I know, I have no hobbies, I'll just take it back to my hotel room and put it all back together. It's actually really therapeutic. You should try this. It's actually quite... We sometimes run workshops on this, and people will, after we finish, we're like, can I just stay and finish this? Because I think I've already got like most of the passport. It's honestly, it's quite a therapeutic thing. But once you get in, I have complete control of the company, right? Because people assume that you're supposed to be there, and you do all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, you can't even imagine some of the stuff that I've done, right? But one of the things I did do was join a meeting. Yes, I know that sounds kind of boring, and it is. But I was walking around this building for some time. I was in there for like 3 or 4 hours, and I was getting a bit bored. And I noticed it was starting to get a little bit empty in some of the floors, until I walked on this floor. And it's packed. There's like hundreds of people in there. It's a terrible photo. I'm really sorry. First of all, if anyone's in your meeting taking photos, again, ask them why. No meeting is actually that interesting. Again, with these people not paying attention to the security incident that's behind them. But what you can probably see, actually, I'll see if I can zoom in here. There is a bald chap here in front of the TV. And he's talking and everyone is listening. And I'm like, oh, this could be interesting. I wonder what it's all about. And it turns out he's the CEO. And they've called like this all hands, which is why everyone's there. And he's talking about how great it's been this year. In fact, security has been the lead thing in their budgets and in the board. In fact, he is pleased to announce today to this room, as I'm standing there, there have been no security incidents. So I do what any professional does. I pull out my mobile phone and I call my client, or rather I text him. Now my client is that chap there. He knows I'm coming in at some point over the next month. He doesn't know where I am or when I am. So I pull out my mobile phone and I text him and I'm like, hey, just let you know I'm in your building. In fact, I'm in your meeting. LOL. So I see him bring out his phone. He looks at it. He looks up in stricken panic, scans the room, and I'm like, you've never seen someone turn so white in your life. It was brilliant. And I was sitting there thinking, please be a Q&A so I can put my hand up and say, who am I? Am I a security incident? It's childish, but I love it. But you can do all sorts of stuff, right? You can go in to, say, a government finance department and then convince them that you're there for team building and start building teepees out of their coats. I got into a lot of trouble for that. It was totally worth it. The brilliant thing is, I was showing the client around later on, and we walked back into this department. He was shocked that I got into this department. I got into the department, and they were all like, hey, FC, high five, like 10 building, blah, blah, blah. And then someone who runs the department came over and had to go at my client for being in there because he shouldn't be, and whilst saying hello to me. It was fantastic. But you can do all sorts of really crazy stuff, right? So I once built myself an office. This is me lounging in my office. Everything you see is actually taken from different buildings. This site was huge. It had 4 security buildings on it. So I thought, I know, I've been here for like all day. I'm bored. I need an office now. So I found this empty area, and I broke into each of the 4 buildings and stole stuff to build my office. So the very heavy glass table came from that building. I wasn't that stupid. Stuff like the computer, I think, came from finance, telephone from like HR or whatever. The chair, however, came from marketing. Marketing always will have like the cushy stuff, right? And I saw this chair and I clocked and I was like, I'm having that. So I start wheeling this chair out and I get to the front gates and it's like these glass barrier things, but they're like 6 foot high, like real nice security ones. And I'm trying to get my my chair out. Sorry, trying to get a chair out. And a couple of people were like, "Whoa, you have to call security to get that out through like the loading bay." I'm like, "Oh man, I just want my chair out." And they're like, "We'll help you lift it over." Sweet, okay. So they help me lift it over the barriers, and they're like, "Cool." So I get out here. What you can also see on this photo is I'm holding a phone. And it's actually a BlackBerry. This sort of dates it a little bit. This BlackBerry I had stolen from the Chief Information Security Officer. He was known as a hard nut. He had given a lot of people a lot of hard times. He had a PA that sat in front of his office like Cerberus, like guarding the gates of hell. So what I did was I got on my hands and knees and I crawled around behind her desk so she couldn't see me. I got into his office, stole his mobile, and left again. It literally blew up. So many phone calls and notifications on it. It was crazy. It was actually making it hard for me to like sneak into other places. So I thought I better take it back to him, explain what I'm doing. So I called my client. We go up there. We talk to the guy, and he is apoplectic with rage. I've never seen someone go purple before. He wasn't involved in the test. He didn't know anything about it. He was angry. I had his phone. I gave him his phone back. He shouted at me for about 20 minutes, like continuously, like proper. He was ex-police, I think. So he shouted at me a lot. And as I'm leaving, he calmed down, and I'm like, all right, I need to get on with the rest of the test. And as I'm leaving, I don't know if you've all watched Columbo. Anyone Columbo fans? Right, Columbo had this thing that he did was like he would stop and make the person think that they got away with it until the last moment. So I'm walking along. Sorry, I'm going to turn my back on you. Walking out of his office, and I'm like, what? One more thing. And I walk back, and I put his mobile phone back on his desk, and I'm like, I stole that whilst you were raging at me, and you didn't notice. Cue another 15 minutes of him shouting at me. But it was well worth it. It was well worth it. But it's not always about stealing stuff, my job. Sometimes I have to break in and put stuff in, right? Implant stuff. So I once broke into a company and stole a phone like this, right? Not this particular phone, but I stole a phone. And this is a VoIP phone. And as you can see, it works. It's got no IP at the moment, but it would work if you plugged it in. So broke in, stole a phone, which doesn't seem that interesting. Broke back in, put the phone back, which seems a bit of a waste of time until you realise that actually what I'd done was put a Raspberry Pi in it. So this is all soldered up to bridge onto the network. It's got a wireless access point underneath it. And basically that means I now have an implanted device on their network that is supposed to be there. No one's ever going to find it because it works like a real phone. It looks like a real phone. It shows up on the network as the phone. And so that means I can just go outside into the car park, hop onto the wireless access point, have complete access to their networks. So sometimes it's very hard to understand how security can be improved. And I'm going to try and wrap this up early because I know we want to all go and watch Terminator. It's going to be amazing. I've heard really good things. So I'm going to very quickly wrap this up now and say this is probably what everyone's thinking. Right, if you haven't seen this movie, go and watch it. It's fantastic. But this is my favourite scene in it. It's really hard to understand that security is actually getting better. And it truly is. Like, since we started, we have made improvements on security. We're still making fundamental errors in it. And people are still using bad frameworks or not doing validation. But I don't want you to all think that this is bad, right? We are getting better at it. And there's things that you can do, right? As developers, there's something you can do, which is go back, look at the physical security of your buildings and help with that. You can do stuff like this. Take an attacker's eye view on the code that you're writing, on the things that you're creating. If you can't do it, if you don't have that mindset, ask someone that does, right? You can tweet at me and just ask me questions. I don't care. I'm here to help you get better. Another thing you can do is demand a security budget. It does seem like it's a waste of money, but honestly, building security in from the start is a lot cheaper than doing it at the end. A lot cheaper. So getting companies like mine involved with that process early on so that we can tell you how you're breaking stuff or how we would break stuff, in order for you to fix it before it goes into production, is a much cheaper thing for your company. And lastly, and this is another big thing that I need you to take away from this talk, is lower your expectations. Right? Because if you try and stop everything, you will stop nothing. You'll fail at everything. So just try and do the fundamental things correctly. Input validation is really important, especially if it comes from anywhere, not just from like the end user, but if you ingest data in any way, then make sure that you're validating it. So just do the simple stuff. Look at the OWASP top 10. Look at how they're attacking things, and then try and fix those in your code. So that has been me. I think we've got a couple of minutes for questions if we want to.
Sure.
Please do follow me on Twitter or the company on Twitter. You can go read about the phone that I built on the blog, as well as a couple of other things. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Do a few Q&A still?
Yeah.
So we've still got 5 minutes for Q&A. We've still got plenty of time. So any questions, raise, and I'll come over. Yeah.
If you don't get to speak to me during this, you can come and speak to me afterwards or after the movie, actually.
Hi.
Hello.
Did you at one time accidentally delete records from a customer, or how do you prevent that?
I've never accidentally deleted records from a customer. I've had that happen whilst I was on site, and whenever pen testers appear on site, they get blamed for everything. So we had one client who accidentally deleted their entire database whilst we were in a different building. We got told about this, and we were like, we can show you all of the logs, we haven't done it. And then there was an awkward conversation where they're like, do we have backups? Do we check those backups? That was awkward, but I've never done it myself. I have caught fire to a switch once, though, but that's another question.
Any more questions?
No, you're all gone shy. It's fine. I don't mind.
Well,
We'll
you
get
can
free
shout.
popcorn and movies.
Hold on.
So what do you do if you get discovered in a building and they point a gun at you? Do you just show the paper?
Yeah, it's basically it. So I get a piece of paper, a signed letter that says who I am, what I'm doing, and it's signed by a couple of people. And the trick to that is always having two pieces of paper. One with the real details on, one with fake details on. Because it's part of the process. So if you ever get caught, you provide the fake one with your mate's telephone numbers, and he answers the phone and says, yeah, he's supposed to be there. I've never had to produce this piece of paper. Only once have I actually had to do something similar, and it was I was doing a lot of banks at the time, high street banks, and I was doing about 8 every week. So it kind of gives you an idea of how regularly I do this. So I was doing 8. It was towards the end of the week, and I was going down the country, and this one area, the area manager was very much against us testing his sites. He thought it was a slight against him and his security. And so he phoned around and told the banks that I was coming. Right? So I walk into this bank, and I'm ushered to one side, and I'm sat down next to this guy who's moaning about his mortgage and how the bank is ruining him and blah, blah, blah. And like, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, this is interesting. This has never happened before, considering who I'm pretending to be. It shouldn't happen. 20 minutes go past. I'm still not being seen. This guy is talking my ear off. When blue flashing lights surround the bank, armed response come in, and I'm like, excuse me, mate, this is for me. And he's like, what have you done? So I then have to explain to the police that I'm there to rob the bank, and that's my job. And, you know, I showed them the fake letter, and they believed me, which is great. So if you want to really rob a bank, just have a fake note. It's a very interesting career to have. But yeah, so that's about the only time. But yeah, you have this letter, and I've never had to really use it, except for that one time where they screwed me over.
Okay, what about handcuffs and being arrested?
Handcuffs and being arrested, right. So if you get arrested, do not resist. Just allow them to do it. Being arrested is not the same as being convicted. You can be arrested easily, and that doesn't go on any sort of record. Handcuffs are very easy to get out of if you have the equipment on you. I haven't actually brought my keys, so I hope I'm not going to get arrested on the way back, but it actually has a handcuff lock on it, key on it, so I can just get out. But you can improvise ways of lockpicking handcuffs anyway. But again, please don't do that.
But you mentioned you were arrested, so...
Yeah. So I was arrested under false pretenses. So someone that I worked for, the company was going under, and he lashed out at everyone and said that I did stuff that I hadn't. And the police looked at it and went, "That's bullshit," and just like threw the case away. So yeah, I wasn't actually put in handcuffs at all for that.
There is a folk belief, some videos on YouTube, if you have a ladder in your hands, like this one,
Yes.
you can literally enter any security area. Is it true?
So I hear this all the time, like carry a ladder or wear a high-vis vest or something like that and you can get in anywhere. That's bollocks, right? That's absolute bollocks. It's not going to work. If you try and break into a really high security area, that is not going to work, ever, right? Because you stand out and you're not in a suit. If you break in wearing a suit into a suited environment, you will get in. If you go in with a high-vis jacket or a ladder, you're not going to. If you're going into like a venue like a sports arena or a music festival or someplace where you would be carrying a ladder or wearing a high-vis jacket, like a building site, then yeah, it might help. But most of the time, it's not going to help. I've never had to carry a prop with me. I have never worn a high-vis jacket. And this is in 25 years of thousands of buildings. It's not really going to help.
Okay, last question. Yeah.
Chap down here.
Okay.
Have you broken into airports?
Have I broken into airports? This is very timely because next week I am going to speak at a event in Dublin called GadWorld, which is a whole bunch of people that run airports. And let's just say they're going to be in for a shock. Airports are essentially the same as everywhere else, right? It's got really good security to stop just the average Joe walking through. If you go to, I'm in Heathrow a lot. I fly around the world a lot, so I'm in a lot of airports and I see a lot of stuff. In fact, I know I didn't have it in this one. There's actually a picture. The code on the door. I actually have a photo in an airport of that exact same thing, where they've written a security code next to the pin code, like pin pad, so that you can get through. So airports are no better or worse than anywhere else. It's just another site to break into.
Cool.
Now, I think we're done.
We're done. Thank you very much.
No
really
problem.
enjoyed that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Cheers.